Current health and safety protocols. I mean, if you go from cruise line to cruise lines to cruise line, they're all different. They're all over the place. Some require testing, some don't. Some have lifted the vaccination, some haven't. It's kind of hard to keep up with all of it, so I thought that today we would go ahead and talk about each of the cruise lines, what their current health and safety protocols are when it comes to testing and when it comes to vaccination. So I thought we'll put it all in one spot, one place, the way it currently is today. So this is going to be the health and safety protocols for all of the major cruise lines out there right now, particularly sailing out of the United States. So let's jump right on in. Chris here with High Seas Cruising, and welcome to today's video. All right, so before we jump into these requirements, I do want to clarify a couple of things here. There are certain departure ports, there are certain cruise destinations that have their own requirements still in place and can affect any upcoming sailings. For example, some of the ones we're familiar with here in the United States, Canada and Bermuda, for example, still require the pre-cruise testing requirement. Grand Caymans, for example, still requires that passengers be fully vaccinated, and so if you're unvaccinated going to the Grand Caymans, you may not be allowed to get off of the ship. So there are some exceptions to all of these rules. So if you do have an upcoming cruise, plan to book an upcoming cruise, go to your cruise line's website, look at the specific requirements for your sailing. That way, in case there's any little changes that differ from the major health and safety protocols each cruise line has put out, you are aware of them ahead of time. So we're going to start with Azamara Cruise Lines. Back on July 25th, 2022, they removed the pre-cruise testing for all of their sailings. Still have their vaccination requirements. They have only removed their pre-cruise testing requirement. For all of their sailings, it doesn't have like a 5-day or less limit on anything like that. They have just removed the pre-cruise testing requirement. Next up is Carnival Cruise Lines. So effective August the 4th, 2022, for sailings that are 5 nights or less, the pre-cruise test will not be required for fully vaccinated passengers. And on sailings that are 6 nights or more, the pre-cruise test is required for all cruise passengers. Okay. And with Carnival, the exception to the 5 nights or less for vaccinated not having to take a test, Canada and Bermuda are still requiring the pre-cruise test. For Princess Cruise Lines, they have not made any changes yet to their vaccination requirement, nor have they made any changes to their pre-cruise testing requirement. The only change that we have seen from Princess Cruise Lines is that they are going to allow up to 10% of unvaccinated passengers to sail on board their ships. But other than that, at this moment in time, Princess has not made any changes, and Holland America, they have not currently made any changes yet at all. So Holland America still has the vaccination requirement. Holland America still has the pre-cruise testing requirement. Of the Carnival Corporation brands, only Carnival Cruise Lines has made any real changes. I said same thing for Princess, and Holland America are pretty much remaining the same, at least as of today. Now we're going to jump over to Royal Caribbean Cruise Lines, because Royal Caribbean, at least right now in my opinion, have some of the most confusing health and safety protocols based on the way that they're doing it. And I kind of understand how they're doing it and why they're doing it. They're trying to get their protocols evolved as quickly as they can while they continue to work with the destinations that they visit. But it can be a little bit confusing if you don't pay, exact attention to what they're doing. So for pre-cruise testing, effective August the 8th, 2022, on sailings that are 5 nights or less, Royal Caribbean will not require the pre-cruise test for vaccinated passengers. Unvaccinated will still have to take a pre-cruise test, and for sailing 6 nights or longer, everybody will still have to do the pre-cruise test. Now, beginning September the 5th, Royal Caribbean is dropping the vaccination requirement for selected home ports. Selected home ports. So, Los Angeles, California, Galveston, Texas, New Orleans, Louisiana, and in Europe will no longer have a vaccination requirement, but it is only those 4 ports and does not begin until September the 5th. They say they are still working with other cruise destinations that they visit in order to get that to more home ports, but as of today, beginning September the 5th, only Los Angeles, Galveston, New Orleans, and Europe will be dropping the vaccination requirement for Royal Caribbean. Now, for celebrity cruise lines, also beginning on August the 8th, sailings that are 5 nights or less for fully vaccinated passengers will no longer require a pre-cruise test. Unvaccinated, of course, will still have to take a pre-cruise test, and for any sailings 6 nights or longer, everybody will have to pre-cruise test. And for celebrity, also beginning on September the 5th, they will make some changes to their vaccination requirements. Any sailings out of Los Angeles and Europe, only those 2 locations, will no longer have a vaccine requirement. I know for Royal, they're doing it out of Galveston and New Orleans also, but Celebrity does not currently have any sailings out of those 2 U.S. ports. So it's only going to be for Los Angeles and for Europe that will no longer have a vaccination requirement. Margaritaville at Sea. As of July 22nd, 2022, vaccinated guests no longer have to pre-cruise test for any of Margaritaville at Sea's sailings. Unvaccinated guests will, of course, still have to provide a negative COVID-19 test. Okay? And theirs is not cruise length limited because, Margaritaville at Sea only does 2 and 3 day sailings between Florida, the Bahamas, and back. They don't have any longer sailings to worry about. But if you're vaccinated on Margaritaville at the Sea, no pre-cruise test is required. MSC Cruise Lines, effective on August the 1st, 2022. MSC Cruise Lines will no longer require a pre-cruise test for vaccinated passengers on sailings 5 nights or less. Anybody who is unvaccinated will have to get a pre-cruise test no matter the cruise length, and any sailings that are 6 nights or longer, everybody will have to have a pre-cruise test. No current changes to MSC's vaccination requirements. Norwegian Cruise Lines, now they have made the biggest changes to their health and safety protocols, and they were effective August the 8th, 2022, and Norwegian has said that vaccinated passengers no longer need to take a pre-cruise test regardless of the voyage length. So it doesn't matter if it's 5 days, 10 days. If you are vaccinated on Norwegian, you no longer need to take a pre-cruise COVID-19 test. And Norwegian has dropped the vaccination requirement. They are accepting both vaccinated and unvaccinated guests. Unvaccinated guests, of course, will still have to take a pre-cruise COVID-19 test prior to boarding the ship, but if you are unvaccinated, you can sail on Norwegian without any problems because they have fully dropped the vaccination requirement and the pre-cruise testing requirement for vaccinated passengers. Viking Cruise Line still requires all passengers to be fully vaccinated, and in Europe they have dropped the pre-cruise testing requirement, but currently for any sailings out of Canada and the United States, a pre-cruise test is still required for all passengers, regardless of your vaccination status, which with Viking, everybody needs to be vaccinated, and essentially if you're sailing from the United States, you still have to test. Okay, so for here in the U.S., no real changes to Viking's requirements as far as sailings from here. Only over in Europe do you no longer need to test. Virgin Voyages. No pre-cruise testing for fully vaccinated passengers is required on board Virgin Voyages. Now, they still want 90% of passengers to be fully vaccinated, but they are allowing 10% unvaccinated passengers on board the ships, and the unvaccinated passengers will still have to provide a negative COVID-19 test prior to embarkation. Disney Cruise Lines. Now, Disney has made no current changes, no updates to their health and safety protocols. They are still requiring fully vaccinated passengers, and they are still requiring the pre-cruise COVID-19 test for all of their passengers. They said so, no real changes from Disney Cruise Line, at least not yet. And finally, effective September the 6th, Cunard Cruise Lines is dropping the pre-cruise COVID-19 test for its fully vaccinated passengers. They are changing the wording from mandatory to highly recommended. So they're recommending that you get the pre-cruise test, but it will no longer be required for Cunard Cruise Lines. That's where we are in testing requirements. That's where we are in vaccination requirements. Of course, these are subject to change daily, weekly. They are continuing to evolve as different cruise ports, destinations, and home ports update and change their protocols. We're going to see the cruise lines continue to evolve their protocols. A lot of them say they're doing a phased restart, a phased approach to changing their health and safety protocols. So like I said, we could see these change again by next week. We could see these change here over this next weekend. Who knows? They're constantly evolving, constantly changing. That's why it's very important that we keep up with the health and safety protocols, particularly if you have an upcoming cruise. That way something doesn't change that can affect your cruise and cause you an issue later on. That's why we kind of put all this together. That way you would have all the information in one spot. But again, if you have any specific questions about your cruise line, any specific questions about your sailing, definitely go over to your cruise line's website and take a look at the information there. It is a lot more detailed. There is a big sections of frequently asked questions on all of the websites. Usually if you log right into one of the cruise line's websites, you look right there at the very top of the screen and it'll tell you current health and safety protocols. You can click on that, jump right into it, and that will be able to answer the majority of your questions. And of course, you can always reach out to the cruise lines themselves. But I hope this information is helpful. I hope it's helpful to have it all in one spot, all in one location. That way you know what all the cruise lines are doing all at once. All right, now I hope everyone out there has enjoyed today's video. If you have, do me a favor, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't done so yet, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. It is free to do so. Helps our channel grow, lets you know anytime a new video comes out. I hope everyone has themselves a really great weekend, and like always, we will see you out on the high seas.